I gave an interview yesterday to Bloomberg, but I gave a totally off the record, you saw it. It said, off the record. And they said they were violated. It's unbelievable what's happening with the fake news.
I think today what's happened is news reporting has become part of the adversary system.
The pressure is on our neighbors to the north.
Because I love Canada. But they've taken advantage of our country for many years. I even love their national anthem. It's called, very appropriately, O Canada. Would you like me to sing it?
DOJ official told congressional investigators this week about a July 2016 breakfast with a former British spy behind the Trump dossier.
He omitted in his filings at the Department of Justice that his wife was getting paid for composing the dossier.
Judicial Watch now has uncovered that no FISA court hearings took place on former Trump campaign associate Carter Page.
To me, it's astonishing and disturbing that these courts couldn't bother to hold hearings on spy warrants targeting Donald Trump.
You decided not to shave.
Well, yeah. I mean, I took a vacation, a couple of weekends. You know, let's grow it out. Let it happen. You know, America's growing a beard. Why not? Why can't we?
Whoa, whoa, ain't nothing like feeling that summertime feeling. Kick back, relax, just chillin'. I'm feeling it. Whoa.
When you corner Pete, he just says America's doing it. Like, America's growing a beard? What are you talking about? Where?
Like when you get vacation time, you know, off your job.
Hunting season.
You grow it up. Maybe it's hunting season in Wisconsin or Minnesota. You just don't care. You don't shave, you know? And then sometimes you come back to work, you're like, I want a little bit of the vacation to bleed over into my work time. That's what I'm going for.
Well, you know, while you've been on vacation, Rachel's been here working really hard.
I know. Other people have been working hard on my behalf.
And I shaved my legs for the show.
Oh, gosh. But we're very glad about that. Last night, I was at the U.S. Open.
Yes.
And it felt a little bit like competing with you because it was Serena versus Venus. The Williams sisters were kind of like these fighting brothers. And I felt a little more like Serena. It was 6-1, 6-2. But they shook hands at the end, just like I shake your hand when I beat you.
You never know how it's going to end up.
And you know what? After, I think you're going to shave in a little bit. I have a gift for you after you shave.
You have a gift for me.
Last weekend,
Ed always comes bearing gifts.
A viewer came up to me and Rachel and said, I want Pete to have this gift. And I'm going to let the viewers see what it says. If you can look, you're going to have to get the DVR out. You see that little thing there? Congratulations.
Santa Ed.
It's going to be a little something
In the
for Pete.
meantime, we want you guys to write in. Let us know what you think of Pete's beard.
Listen, I know you guys. Save it. They want to shave it off. They're telling me it has to go. I don't think it should.
At FoxNews.com. Should it be shaved in the next hour or so? We've got some plans for Pete. Let's put it that way.
Oh, boy.
And we also have a lot of news breaking overnight. There's this big dust-up yesterday.
About your profession.
The
profession of journalism.
You told me to lead here because I thought I was going to go with the news, but you were setting me up, I think. You want to come after the fake news. Well, I got news for you. I might agree with you a little bit about this because yesterday there's this dust-up about how the president does an interview with Bloomberg News, and he's talking about, among other things, this emerging trade deal with Canada. There's an on-the-record part, and then there's an off-the-record part where he allegedly said all kinds of controversial things. When you read them closely, they don't sound that controversial.
Yeah.
The Toronto Star saying Donald Trump confirms the Star story on his secret bombshell remarks about Canada. Well, what were the bombshell remarks? Among other things, he allegedly told Bloomberg in the private part of the interview, I can't kill these people, he said of the Canadian government. In another remark he did not want published, Trump said that any deal with Canada would be, quote unquote, totally on our terms. Well, number one, off the record shouldn't have gotten out. So we'll get to that.
Yes,
number
we'll
two,
get to that.
What's so controversial about him saying America first? I want a good deal.
I read the remarks. They didn't feel controversial at all, Rachel.
They're not controversial. However, if you're in the middle of a deal trying to help American dairy farmers, maybe you don't want that out there. And when I read the remarks, I understood why the president was mad. Here's what the president has to say about being saying something off the record and it being printed. It said, still can't believe that Bloomberg violated a firm off-the-record statement. Will they put out an apology? So he wants an apology from Bloomberg.
Yeah, he does. I mean, he calls it. I mean, he spoke last night as well. The president at I believe it was a series of fundraisers in North Carolina.
It was fun.
Talking, as always, very interesting. He talked about what it means to be off the record. It's not a legal term. He says it's a term of honor. You put a lot of trust in journalists when you talk off the record. He's saying sometimes it doesn't work. Listen.
I gave a totally off the record, you saw it. It said, off the record. And I said something strong, but it's my belief. And they violated it. And they said they were violating it. When you say off the record, it's not a legal term, but it's a term of honor. They said, President Trump said, off the record, and then they go on to this. I said, this is the first. These are very dishonorable people. But I said, in the end, it's okay, because at least Canada knows how I feel. So it's fine. It's fine. It's true.
So there's the unwritten rules of journalism, Ed. So the president gave an off-the-record remark to Bloomberg. Somehow the Toronto Star got it. Does the Toronto Star then have the obligation to
They
not
don't have
turn
the
off
obligation. I
record?
think Toronto Star, as journalists, if they did reporting and found out the president said this in private, by the way, the president's not confirmed he said it, basically. He's not denying. He's angry about it, and justifiably
Right.
so. So the question to me is, did the Bloomberg reporters who did not publish those off-the-record remarks, did they start talking to their colleagues in the press room and say, you won't believe what he said off the record, which is something you're not supposed to do, because then it's going to get reported. If it's off the record, it's not just off the record to publish. It's off the record to talk about. You're not supposed, because once you start talking about it, it's going to leak out.
I think in the end, this isn't so bad for the president. I mean, look, he is the only president in recent history that has gone to bat for American workers, for American farmers. The farmers in dairy country love that he's fighting this hard for
Oh,
them.
by the way,
Yes.
the trade talks, everyone said they're off because of these off-the-record marks. They're back on Monday.
Because
US and
Donald Trump has them cornered, and they have to.
It's not really that big of a deal.
Like, maybe this is all part of a giant negotiation strategy. Now that we've got a good deal or a better deal with Mexico, Canada's got to come on board. We shall see.
But really quick, Ed, does this hurt the president? I mean, the press, I mean, they say they want more access to the president.
It hurts credibility. You
Yeah.
get time with the president and something he tells you on the side. Hey, I'm trusting. That's the thing. It's a trust. I'm trusting you. Look, the last couple of days, we've also been spending a lot of time, justifiably so, on memorial services for two important Americans, John McCain and Aretha Franklin. Yesterday, here we are. We're talking about, hey, let's celebrate the life and legacy of this American icon, Aretha Franklin. And what does Al Sharpton of MSNBC do? He gets up there and tries to cover a mistake he made, misspelling one of her most famous songs when she first died. He went on MSNBC and misspelled the key word, which you're going to hear, respect. He turned that around as what? A jab at President Trump at a funeral.
You know, the other Sunday on my show, I misspelled respect. And a lot of y'all corrected me. Now I want y'all to help me correct President Trump to teach him what it means. And I say that because when word went out that Miss Franklin passed, Trump said she used to work for me. No, she used to perform for you. She worked for us. Aretha never took orders from nobody but God.
I mean, Aretha Franklin, an American icon, as you said, an amazing woman that changed our culture, empowered a lot of people, wonderful. To me, the story was not those comments, predictable from Al Sharpton.
Yeah.
Right.
You looked at the so-called mainstream media, there were a lot of photos circulating. You had Bill Clinton, you had Jesse Jackson, you had Al Sharpton. And then in the fourth seat, you had Louis Farrakhan.
Oh, wait, there he is on the left.
Oh, there he is. A lot of the media cropped him out. A lot of the mainstream folks didn't want Louis Farrakhan. May I remind you, white folks are going down. White people deserve to die. The satanic Jews. He's an out-and-out racist. And the reality is, he can go to that funeral.
Sure, if the family wanted him
it's a family
there,
thing. It's totally understandable. But so much of the media were putting photos out of the other three and not him. And I just think it's such a double standard. Imagine if the inverse were to be true and there were a white national racist there. They would
three seats
blow it
if
up.
President Trump attended that funeral and there was a white nationalist 3 seats over, I suspect that would be the lead.
It would be the lead story. I mean, the truth is, Bill Clinton, Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, Louis Farrakhan, I don't want to be lectured by any of them. That said, it was a beautiful funeral. I was really impressed by how overtly Christian so much of it was. And certainly Jennifer Hudson's rendition of Amazing Grace was, I mean, talk about divinely inspired. It brought tears to the eyes.
It was wonderful. It went on a little long, and we don't want to go too long.
It was a long
It went on for hours.
I hope they had snacks because it was like 8 hours long. So anyway, we're going to turn.
A few more headlines, right?
Yeah, we're going to read some headlines, and we'll have some snacks.
Yes.
Services continue in Washington, D.C. today for the late Senator and war hero John McCain. His family, including his mother Roberta and wife Cindy, paying their final respects to McCain, who is the 30th person to lie in state in the U.S. Capitol Rotunda.
I will miss a dear friend whose smile reminded us that service is a privilege. and whose scars reminded us of the great cost that brave souls pay for our freedom.
And later this hour, we'll have a live report from Capitol Hill on the ceremony planned this morning at the National Cathedral.
The FBI arresting the Muslim extremists accused of training kids to become school shooters at a New Mexico compound. All 5 now charged with breaking firearm and conspiracy laws, and they're going to appear in court on Tuesday. 3 of the suspects were released from custody on Wednesday after prosecutors missed a deadline to present evidence. 11 starving kids were found during a raid at a compound last month, along with the remains of a little 3-year-old boy. Unbelievable. Colin Kaepernick welcomed by the crowd at the U.S. Open with a standing ovation. The social justice warrior sitting in a luxury box with his former teammate, the Williams sisters showdown in New York. Serena Williams beating Venus in straight sets to move 1 round closer to another major championship. It was the 30th time that the pair have faced off in their careers. Wow. Those are your headlines.
As I mentioned, I was there. I was stunned about the standing ovation. Colin Kaepernick was, a few sections for me.
Yeah.
He was well received. Let's just put it that way. All right. The viewers spoke, and we are going to listen. Pete's vacation beard is literally on the chopping block this morning.
I don't think the viewers spoke.
They spoke.
They did.
We asked a few moments ago.
The viewers spoke. I'll tell you this. I saw you, and I was like, that beard has to go. I'll tell you.
We have a live look. Pardon me. We have a live look of the barber standing by. Look at this. He's got everything. Where are the blades? That's what I want to know. Where are the blades? He doesn't seem that excited. We just woke him up.
Yeah,
Apparently, we literally just called him.
There's been a lot of response. You have one person standing up for your beard. That's my husband, Congressman Sean Duffy, who
Thank
said
you, Congressman.
he said you should keep it. He said it looks good.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're getting it shaved.
Listen to what Judy emailed in. Hate Pete's beard. He was so cute before, and now I don't even like looking at him. Please tell him, shave it off.
That is hilarious. From Mike, make Pete shave again.
That's the best response.
Probably pretty good. And Chris, the beard would work well on a deserted island with a parrot, but not on Fox and Friends.
Can we get a parrot?
We might.
You know what? Keep the emails coming. There's one last hope. Maybe we could send the barber away. Friends@foxnews.com. What do you think? So far, it's 3-0.
If
Maybe
you like
more.
it, 3
Shave it off.
cherry-picked emails to nothing.
What do the kids
I gotta
think?
believe
Pete? What do the kids think? Do they like it?
Yeah, I mean, it's fluffy. I feel like Santa Claus. There's a lot of grays.
You were so cute before. Anyway, President Trump warned the DOJ he's about to take some action.
If it doesn't straighten out properly, I want them to do their job. I will get involved, and I'll get in there if I have to.
Now we've learned some new information. There were no FISA court hearings at all on Carter Page before he was spied on. Is it time for the president to step in?
Plus, a whole new meaning to higher education. One college will give you a degree to study pot.
What?
Wow.
This is taking me now. It's taking me higher, higher.
Sounds like a new bombshell report about the Russia probe. A court filing uncovered by Judicial Watch reveals that no FISA court hearings took place before they approved that controversial request to surveil the Trump campaign aide, Carter Page.
Here to react, former Deputy Director of Public Affairs at the DOJ, Ian Pryor. Ian, thanks for being here this morning. Tom Fitton was on Sean Hannity's show last night talking more about that. He's the president of Judicial Watch. Listen to what he had to say.
It's astonishing and disturbing that these courts couldn't bother to hold hearings on spy warrants targeting Donald Trump. These courts that are supposed to provide oversight of the secret spy process refused to do so. You've got the courts falling asleep at the wheel here, and of course you got the underlying corruption of the DOJ and FBI.
So, Ian, it sounds like no hearings and a lot of rubber stamping. Well, what do you make of this?
Well, look, this is the public's first real look into the FISA application process. But the lack of a hearing is not necessarily abnormal. There's no rule that requires the court to have hearings. In fact, it's discretionary within the court. That said, it's been reported that what usually happens is the DOJ lawyers, the National Security Division, engage in a bit of a back and forth with the court, with the staff of the court, to make sure that the application is buttoned up and passes court muster before they submit it. So that sort of takes the place of a hearing, supposedly.
So, but Ian, let me challenge that, because if in fact that may be the case, that there's not a lot of hearings, okay? And if there are not, well, and say we're talking about surveillance of a suspected ISIS terrorist, there might not need to be a hearing because we might have evidence at the Justice Department and the FBI that we got to go and stop a terror attack. In this case, we're talking about an American citizen in Carter Page. Let me basically turn it around on you. Shouldn't there be more of a check? Shouldn't there be hearings if an American, any American, a Democrat or Republican, is surveilled on by our government?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And look, this is one of the things that's in the Inspector General's broad mandate here is to look at the FISA application process. And often when the Inspector General comes out with these kind of reports, he will recommend changes. This is what we should do. This is how we should do it better. And I think it's a great question, and I think it's something we should look at. Should there be hearings? Should there be more oversight? Should there be more protections? And I think we will have that debate in the coming months.
Ian, well, the president in the last couple of days has talked about maybe I should get involved. Maybe declassification should happen. We don't know a lot about this FISA process. Clearly, it was abused, or it seems to have been abused at some level. What can we do to bring transparency to this process to make sure it's not abused again and people who abused it are held accountable?
Well, I'll say this about, the president's comments. I think you hear a lot of people, they talk about the Department of Justice like it's a fourth branch of government. It's not. All the executive power flows to the President of the United States. He delegates that power, he can take it back. And if he feels that something needs to be changed or that something needs to be declassified, that's a decision he has to make. And certainly this is an issue that is on the minds of a lot of people. It's currently being investigated by the Inspector General, and I think it is an important issue for people to look closely at.
Okay, look at it. But to follow up on one of Pete's questions there, and I know there's a lot we're throwing at you, so I understand we got to go through this piece by piece, but he said, what about holding people accountable? If there were Susan Rice or James Comey back in the last administration, hold them accountable if, and I underline if, there were abuses, but also move forward now. Why does Bruce Ohr still have a job at the Justice Department?
Well, let me say this. What Bruce Ohr did, back-channeling information from Christopher Steele to the FBI, was absolutely inappropriate. It was not his job. His portfolio was gangs and drugs, not counterintelligence. And even if it was counterintelligence, he was obviously conflicted. So he would have had to recuse himself.
Because his wife was working at Fusion GPS, and he maybe even had a financial interest in this, a conflict of interest, as you say. So let me go back to the question. Where's the accountability? How does he still have a job? Because you're admitting and acknowledging fairly that this was inappropriate. Why does he still have a job?
Well, I can tell you the leadership of this Department of Justice is going to follow the same process that they did when they fired Andy McCabe and Peter Strzok. They're going to let the Inspector General continue his investigation, submit a report. If that report shows that Bruce Ohr broke the law or broke department policy, I suspect he will suffer the same fate as Peter Strzok and Andy McCabe.
So you don't think he'll have a job in 6 months or a year?
I don't know. I have to see what the Inspector General report says. I know they're going to rely heavily upon that.
Would a declassification of the FISA applications be a national security problem?
Well, I think there's a lot of things to consider on that front. I think, first of all, the president needs to know that he has a rabid press corps that is waiting for him to do that because they will attack mercilessly. But I think the bigger problem for the president here is if he does that and Democrats take the House in November, that is going to be a big problem for him politically coming up.
All right, Ian Pryor, we appreciate you coming in.
Ian, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Ian gets to wear a beard. I can't.
No, it's coming
But
off.
he looks good.
We may stop him from leaving the D.C. bureau.
All right, well, he may have lost the 2004 election, but could he give it another shot 16 years later in 2020? Why his name has been added to the long list of Dems vying to take on President Trump.
Windsurfing his way into the race. And how can you tell the story about the moon landing without the iconic planting of the American flag on the moon? Well, Hollywood seems to think they can get away with it. We'll ask a former astronaut what he thinks next.
Welcome back. A couple of quick headlines for you. More than 24 dangerous MS-13 gang members are now off the streets. 25 people charged in connection with several murders and drug trafficking. The arrests come after a months-long investigation into gang operations in Fresno, California. And an extra 1,400 officers will patrol Chicago streets this Labor Day weekend, hoping to curb the ongoing violence. But the weekend is already off, unfortunately, to a deadly start. 9 people were shot yesterday alone. 2 of those victims are dead, unfortunately. Rachel, down to you.
Thanks, Pete. Is Hollywood trying to rewrite American history, specifically this iconic moment?
The upcoming new film, First Man, featuring Ryan Gosling, facing intense scrutiny for omitting Neil Armstrong's historic planting of, yes, the American flag on the moon.
Gosling defending the decision, saying, hey, it was a human and universal achievement. But does this do a disservice to the bravery of American astronauts?
With us now, former astronaut, retired U.S. Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel Andy Allen. Lieutenant Colonel, welcome.
Good morning.
What's your reaction to this? Because just factually, as a journalist, there was an American flag planted on that moon.
It was, and I guess I look at it in two perspectives. So from the first perspective, it was this nation, it was America that led this space race to the moon. It was America that planted this flag on the moon. It was the American leadership that got us there, that had the vision to get us there, and that got us the right funding to get us there. It was the American people that made it happen with their tax monies, and it was the team of people that made the event really occur, to the point that as all astronauts want, you have as many landings as you do takeoffs. From a personal perspective, when you made a great accomplishment or something that you think is a great accomplishment, you have that defining moment. You have that moment that says, I did it, I got it, I made it. Whether that's the last step on Mount Everest, whether that's crossing the threshold, whether that's hearing a baby on a delivery making their first cry, whether it's main engine cut off on your first flight, whether it's wheel stop when you're the commander of a landing, whether it's planting the flag on the moon. That defining moment defines that you did it, that you made it. After that, it's perspective, it's reflection.
So the key is that you said yourself that this was American taxpayer money, American muscle. It was an American president, a Democrat named John F. Kennedy, who said, we're going to the moon. Why can't Hollywood just say this was an American achievement?
Well, that's an interesting question, and I'm not sure I'm qualified to have the answer of why Hollywood would do that. I hope that they didn't do it with ill intent, that it would be a disservice to this nation and to the people that believe in what that flag represents. That flag is about, it doesn't represent a perfect nation, it represents leadership and it represents commitment to this Constitution. So
Well, there seems
our leadership got us to where we went to.
You want to say there seems to have been a lot of controversy about our flag lately, and who knows, maybe that had something to do with it. Here's a statement from Mark and Rick Armstrong, who are the sons of Neil Armstrong, on this omission. They say the story is human and it's universal, of course. It celebrates an American achievement. It also celebrates an achievement for all mankind, as it says on the plaque, Neil and Buzz left on the moon. It is a story about an ordinary man who makes profound sacrifices and suffers through intense loss in order to achieve the impossible. So obviously his sons aren't offended or upset about this historical omission. Do you have any thoughts on why they feel that way? Or have you talked to other astronauts, by the way, and gotten their thoughts on it?
I've talked to a few of the other astronauts, and I certainly agree with the sons in the sense that this is the event of what they would call an ordinary man that got to do an extraordinary event. This is a person that was ready and at the call of duty did what he was supposed to do. And at the end of all of it, Neil Armstrong was an American patriot. He did this because this was the calling he was asked to go perform.
Right. It's a great point. He wasn't a global citizen. He was an American.
Right, exactly.
So,
Lieutenant Colonel, we appreciate it. Like you said,
Thank you.
It was an American achievement done by an American patriot, so we appreciate your time. Thank you, sir. While thousands paid their respect to Aretha Franklin, Al Sharpton took the time, as we noted a moment ago, to take a jab at the president.
Trump said she used to work for me. No, she used to perform for you. She worked for us.
And Louis Farrakhan was front and center right near President Clinton. Was that really appropriate? We'll get into that.
And Pete's about to say goodbye to his vacation beard. He's getting lathered up, and his beard is gone next.
Services continue in Washington, D.C. later this morning to celebrate the life and legacy of Senator John McCain.
And this comes after thousands of Americans flocked to the Capitol Rotunda to say their final goodbyes. Chad Pergram joins us live from Capitol Hill with more on today's memorial. Chad?
These are the final hours for John McCain here at the U.S. Capitol, a U.S. Capitol
Stars reminded us of the great cost that brave souls pay for our freedom.
A man, yes, of the Senate, but also a man of the House. A Navy man. A family man. A man who made an enormous difference in the lives of countless people.
Now, without question, the most emotional moment of the day came when Sam Johnson, a Republican congressman from Texas who is retiring, who was a cellmate of John McCain's in Vietnam, was escorted to the casket by House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi and Joe Crowley, the Democratic congressman from Queens, New York. Now, Senator McCain, he will be taken from the Capitol about 8:30, 9 o'clock this morning by motorcade to the National Cathedral. They will stop briefly, pause the motorcade by the Vietnam Memorial here in Washington. He will be eulogized by President Obama and George W. Bush, two people who beat him in his quest for the presidency. We'll also hear from Lindsey Graham, Republican senator from South Carolina, who is his best friend in the Senate. He will read from the Book of John. Very appropriate. And there will also be a reading from The Requiem, a poem by Robert Louis Stevenson. And it goes like this. Here he lies where he longed to be. Here is the sailor home from the sea. Rachel, Ed.
Wow, beautiful.
Thanks, Chad. Very moving.
Thank you, Chad. Turning now to your headlines. A dozen airline passengers treated for respiratory issues after a can of pepper spray accidentally goes off mid-flight. Pilots declaring an emergency but safely landing in Maui hours after taking off from California. 3 crew members also treated, but it's unclear how the pepper spray went off. A passenger is now facing a fine for smuggling the pepper spray on board.
Wow.
TV co-workers turn out to be not so friendly off camera. The meteorologist on the right is accused of fracturing the skull and rupturing the eardrum of the TV anchor on the left. They need to come to Fox and Friends. West Virginia police say a bar fight broke out when Erica Bivens, the anchor, confronted Chelsea Ambrose for allegedly hitting on her husband. Police say that's when Ambrose violently shoved Bivens. Ambrose, she could face up to a year in jail while Bivens is recovering at home. Wow. A bikini-clad blimp of Mayor Sadiq Khan is taking to the skies over London today. Donors raising $75,000 to fly the 29-foot balloon over Parliament to mock the anti-Trump mayor. The stunt is in response to the Trump baby balloon that was flown in protest during the president's trip to the UK last month.
Pete is jumping in from the barber.
Yeah, he liked that one. One college is putting the high in higher education. New Jersey's Stockton University now rolling out a minor in marijuana studies. I would not be a parent wanting to pay for that. The pro-pot courses include business science and the law behind the budding field. 6 medical marijuana facilities are running in the Garden State, and officials are considering legalization for the recreational use of it. So that's the rationale behind the class.
Wow.
Those are your headlines,
It's a good thing they didn't have a barber segment going on in that local TV thing because they'd have a razor.
Oh, yeah, that would be really dangerous to give those ladies knives.
Rick, you look clean shaven this morning.
I want to comment on every one of those headlines.
I know, right?
I was hoping each one of those headlines was the last one so I could talk about because whoever put those together, that was really awesome. All right, talk a little bit about the weather. These are yesterday's high temperatures. It was so brutal this week across a lot of the eastern seaboard. A little bit of cool off yesterday and for the weekend, but the heat is coming back. Along with that, you notice these air streams right there. Cooler temperatures along the coast, but that air is moving toward the coast. And we're going to have all kinds of risks for rip currents along the eastern seaboard, even around the Gulf this weekend. So be very careful if you're out on the beaches for this last weekend, unofficial weekend of the summer. Take a look at this. Also, a lot of precipitation out there across the eastern 2/3 of the country. We'll see those pop up and fire up again this afternoon. All right, guys. Over to you.
Wow.
Wait, what's going on? I'm coming.
Come on over, Rick. It's back to reality for a good friend, Pete Hegseth, and his vacation beard has got to go.
That's right. Our viewers have spoken, and they have voted. I voted too, to take off the scruffy look.
The viewers have not spoken.
Yes, they
If you look on Twitter, 53% said no, keep growing it.
Oh,
Here
come
to-
on.
Here to show us a proper shave and how it's done on yours truly is Sion Mirakov, barber and co-owner of Cohen Barbershop here in Manhattan. And you told us you're Russian.
Yes.
And you weren't part of any of that Russian collusion stuff, right?
There's a lot of irony in you
Because
doing
Pete-
Pete's beard.
I believe there could have been some collusion for you wanting to shave the beard off. I think you might have got
There's
in
a
on
lot
this.
of collusion behind the scenes about
Right.
this.
All right.
So now we're going to get to the shave part, right?
Yes.
It's with a knife.
Sure.
Straight blade, yeah.
Okay, so we have some emails while Pete's getting shaved. We have an email from Julie. She says, glad you had a nice vacation. If you need a vote on the beard, I like seeing your face. See, that's actually, it's a compliment.
Patty emails, you are too handsome to have that fur on your face shave.
They're calling it fur.
All right, Michael emailed. He says, a man without a beard is like a lion without a mane.
That's how I feel.
I feel this. Listen, I am opposed to what is happening right now. I have gone into our boss's office every year for like 10 years saying, can I keep it? And every time they say no, and I don't get it, frankly.
Here's an email from Mary, by the way. Pete used to be our all-American, cute, clean-cut boy next door with strange-looking socks. Now he looks awful.
Wow. People are speaking. Phil writes in, Pete looks like he walked out of a Civil War meeting with President Lincoln.
Wow.
That is.
So what's the best part of the shave? The hot towel?
The whole thing, yeah. It's like a man spa.
You know what's a bummer about what's happening to you right now is normally when you shave off your vacation beard, you do it in phases.
Yeah.
So you can be like, all right, now I have a goatee, or now I have a super long mustache. Like you got to go through this.
We got a show to do though. He's got to get moving.
You're having to take it all off in one fell swoop.
Keep a mustache. I'm hoping to keep a mustache.
Don't leave the stash. All right.
So you're going to have to stay tuned because we got a lot more. We're going to see whether Pete's going to make it back to the show.
Might take 20 minutes.
The media is pushing a new poll claiming trouble for the president. But are the numbers misleading? What Team Trump is saying this morning, that's coming up.
And Brett Kavanaugh is President Trump's Supreme Court nominee, but what do people on the street actually know about him?
Do you know his name? No. Anybody? Do you know who that person is? Neil Kavanaugh. That sounds like a combination of both.
More of Pete on the street, and that's coming up.
I have a Russian with a blade to my throat.
Good morning. Again, some quick headlines. They've gone from bitter primary foes to campaigning together.
I've never met anybody that could lie like him.
Donald is a sore loser.
Lion Ted. Lyin apostrophe, right? Lion Ted.
Nominating Donald Trump is a train wreck.
Train wreck. Well, now President Trump's tweeting, quote, I will be doing a major rally for Senator Ted Cruz in October. I'm picking the biggest stadium in Texas we can find. Cruz is running to keep his U.S. Senate seat against Democratic candidate Beto O'Rourke. That is
Beto. Come on,
oh, sorry, Beto. It's turning out to be a closer race than many expected. And former Secretary of State John Kerry refusing to squash rumors about his own White House ambitions in 2020.
You going to run in 2020?
I'm not thinking about it right now.
But I hear the passion in your voice.
I've never retreated or retired. Talking about 2020 right now is a total distraction and waste of time.
Waste of time. He didn't shut the door, though, so Kerry already won the Democratic nomination, remember, in 2004, but lost the race to former President George W. Bush. We'll see if he gets back in.
That's right. And thousands gathered in Detroit yesterday to pay their final respects to Aretha Franklin.
But for the Reverend Al Sharpton, the Queen of Soul's funeral was the perfect venue to, yes, go after the president.
On my show, I misspelled respect. And a lot of y'all corrected me. Now I want y'all to help me correct President Trump to teach him what it means. Trump said she used to work for me. No, she used to perform for you. She worked for us.
Here with his reaction, Executive Director of unhyphenatedamerica.org, Christopher Harris. Good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning.
So I'm watching a good part of this. It went on for many hours. I couldn't watch the whole funeral, I have to admit. But it was a wonderful tribute to a wonderful woman, an American icon. There were beautiful songs. Of course, there was wonderful music. And there were a lot of wonderful eulogies, including by former President Bill Clinton. Why in the world would somebody have to drag in the president and use this as a venue to beat up on the commander-in-chief?
Well, you know, and I think that I heard that the Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey Circus, went out of business back in May, but it seems like Al Sharpton was trying to turn it into a circus event. You know, and Aretha Franklin is an icon, and that's how she should be remembered. and not allowing people like Al Sharpton to use this as an opportunity to take shots at the president. What the president's doing is actually helping America in general and black folks in particular. So why take shots at the president instead of just honoring Aretha Franklin?
Mm-hmm. Right, and why not use this opportunity to bring people together? I mean, she was an American icon, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, she comes from an era where, look, she grew up in a city that was very segregated. My family's from Detroit. My parents grew up around the corner from Aretha Franklin's family, and they can tell you what Detroit was like back then. But yet, and still, people like Aretha Franklin, with whatever they experienced, they still loved America, whether it was James Brown or other singers like that. They traveled around the world, but they still talked about how much they loved America. Right. And it's a shame that people like Al Sharpton wanted to take shots and try to denigrate the American president in a place where there was no need for it. There was no calling for it.
And you rightly point out civil rights, the importance of that, and pushing back against discrimination in this country. So then why in the world would Louis Farrakhan be up there sitting a couple seats away from a former American president when everybody knows he's an anti-Semite, says absolutely absurd, offensive things all the time?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, there was only one man of God who was up there on stage, and that was Reverend Williams, who actually got the most flack for speaking the word. I'm a Christian, and so I like to. The church I attend, we believe the Bible, and we believe that you speak the word regardless of where you are. And so Reverend Williams caught a lot of flack for basically saying that here are the problems that are there in the black community, and here are the things that we need to do to address these things. And here he was, the one that people didn't want to talk about. They talked about him, but in a negative way. Whereas you had someone like Farrakhan, who espouses a separation, who is basically a racist. And nobody wanted to denigrate him. And he's sitting up there next to, I would call Al Charlatan more than Al Sharpton. He's not a reverend.
Right. He talks about division a lot more than actually bringing people together. Christopher Harris, appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Now, we're just about 2 months from the midterm. So what are the key races that will determine the balance of power on Capitol Hill? Jim McLaughlin joins us to break it down next.
Plus, these are the 8 Supreme Court justices on the bench right now. But how many people can actually name them? We put Pete on the street to find out.
Come on, the rising wind. We're going up around the bend.
Good morning again. Some quick headlines. They've gone from bitter primary foes to campaigning together.
I've never met anybody that could lie like him.
Donald is a sore loser.
Lion Ted. L-Y-I-N apostrophe, right? Lion Ted.
Nominating Donald Trump is a train wreck.
Train wreck. Well, now President Trump's tweeting, quote, "I will be doing a major rally for Senator Ted Cruz in October. I'm picking the biggest stadium in Texas we can find." Cruz is running to keep his U.S. Senate seat against Democratic candidate Beto O'Rourke. That is
Beto. Come on.
Oh, sorry, Beto. It's turning out to be a closer race than many expected. And former Secretary of State John Kerry refusing to squash rumors about his own White House ambitions in 2020.
You going to run in 2020?
I'm not thinking about it right now.
But I hear the passion in your voice.
I've never retreated or retired. Talking about 2020 right now is a total distraction and waste of time.
Waste of time. He didn't shut the door, though, so Kerry already won the Democratic nomination, remember, in 2004, but lost the race to former President George W. Bush. We'll see if he gets back in.
That's right. And thousands gathered in Detroit yesterday to pay their final respects to Aretha Franklin.
But for the Reverend Al Sharpton, the Queen of Soul's funeral was the perfect venue to, yes, go after the president.
On my show, I misspelled respect. And a lot of y'all corrected me. Now I want y'all to help me correct President Trump to teach him what it means. Trump said she used to work for me. No, she used to perform for you. She worked for us.
Here with his reaction, Executive Director of unhyphenatedamerica.org, Christopher Harris. Good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning.
So I'm watching a good part of this. It went on for many hours. I couldn't watch the whole funeral, I have to admit. But it was a wonderful tribute to a wonderful woman, an American icon. There were beautiful songs. Of course, there was wonderful music. And there were a lot of wonderful eulogies, including by former President Bill Clinton. Why in the world would somebody have to drag in the president and use this as a venue to beat up on the commander-in-chief?
Well, you know, Ed, I think that I heard that the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus went out of business back in May, but it seems like Al Sharpton was trying to turn it into a circus event. You know, and Aretha Franklin is an icon, and that's how she should be remembered. You know, and not allowing people like Al Sharpton to use this as an opportunity to take shots at the president. You know, what the president's doing is actually helping America in general and black folks in particular. So why take shots at the president instead of just honoring Aretha Franklin?
Right, and why not use this opportunity to bring people together? I mean, she was an American icon, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, she comes from an era where, look, she